Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council special meeting for Monday, February 28th. I call this meeting to order. Let's first begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise if you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Assistant City Clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Certainly. Thank you. Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Neunenkamp? Present. Member Russell?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Here.
Member Wink?
Here.
Member Woodward?
Here.
And Mayor Sierra.
Here.
All 7 are present.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, a proclamation. And before we get started, I did notice an error, and Member Neunenkamp as well. There is an error in the proclamation stating January as Black History Month, but it should actually read February. I also don't believe that we have to issue a vote on this, but if there's any members of council that disagree with that, let me know. But I think I could just go ahead and read the proclamation. Seeing no objection, I'll go ahead and read. Whereas the city of Inglewood is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of all of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant character of the community. Whereas the city of Inglewood recognizes that our nation was founded upon the principles that all people are created equal, and that each person has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and pays tribute to the contributions that African Americans have made in American history in their struggles for freedom and equality, and deepens our understanding of our shared history, as well as remembering important and influential people and events in the history of the American diaspora. And whereas in 1926, Dr. Carter G. Woodson established the observance of African American history to focus on the contributions, achievements, and involvement of African American people in the development of our American democracy. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our attention to the continued need to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals and celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by Black Americans to our economy, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas the city of Inglewood strives to be an inclusive community in which all citizens, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for the contributions and potential contributions to our community, the state, the country, and the world. And whereas the city established the Staff-Based Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee made up of 19 staff members from all departments that unanimously approved a recommendation establishing February as Black History Month in Inglewood. Whereas the city of Inglewood is proud to honor the history and contributions of Black people in our community and through our state and nation. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Othaniel Sierra, Mayor of the City of Inglewood, and the City Council hereby proclaim February as Black History Month in the City of Inglewood, and encourage all residents to consider the many contributions of Black Americans to our community and world. Given under my hand and sealed this 28th day of February 2022. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the DEI committee for bringing this forward to us. Moving on to agenda item 5, Finance Manager Kevin Engels will be present to review the preliminary December monthly financial report. Good evening, Mr. Engels. Good evening, Director Lowe.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Surprise, I will review the 2021 December preliminary financial with you all tonight, and Finance Manager Engel will present the January 2022 financial. So we will divide and conquer. So let me share my screen with you. First, I want to make the council aware the major audit adjustments are included in the presentation tonight, except the December sales use taxes received in January 2022. We still need to record the December 2021 sales use tax back in 2021. Also, the PowerPoint slides have been changed as per council previous request. First, a one-time revenue and expenditures for 2021 and 2020 are subtracted from the report, and the signs for expenditure variances is changed to ensure consistency between revenue and expenditure and make the financial statements are more readily readable for financial statements reader. Also, a transfer out of $150,000 to advance the EDDA first year's operation is added to slide 14. Since the council approved the loan agreement last week, the advance will be reclassified as a loan when we present the February financials. Lastly, the Inglewood Urban Renewal Authority URA area in the sales tax map areas 9 to 12 are removed from the map. So here is the revenue for general fund. Through December 2021, the city's general fund receives total 54.45 million, which is 1.9 million higher than the budget and 3.58 million higher than the same time 2020. Please note, we subtract the one-time 300,000 sales tax liability adjustment and 680,000 for ARPA funding and 2.84 million in the CARES Act funding from this report. You may recall the city has been awarded 8.7 million ARPA funding and received the first installation of 4.33 million in June 2021. The U.S. Department of Treasury issued the final rule in early January 2022, which permits all cities with population less than 50,000 to use up to 10 million under the lost revenue provision. For 2021, the general fund has recognized 689,000 of ARPA funds, which is being subtracted from this report. Since the council approved the ARPA spending plan on the 7th, the staff will present a budget supplemental for such proposed allocation in April. So let's take a look at the major revenue variances. First is sales use taxes. The total 33.69 million, which is 1.1 million higher than the budget and 1.84 million than the last year. Another major variances come from license and permits. These total 2.2 million is 1 million higher than the budget and 569,000 higher than 2020. These variances are mainly due to several large development plan review fees totaling 350,000. Parks and Rec have 2.36 million, which is on target compared to the budget, and 1.36 million higher than the actual last year. I want to point out the miscellaneous revenue. This line item is up by 619,000, which is largely due to a health insurance savings of 547,000. The city has had savings from the healthcare insurance in 2020, 2021, and will have a little savings in 2022, but we may not have the savings in 2023. Since the savings are not a one-time savings, we include the revenue in the presentation, and we did not subtract the savings from the healthcare insurance payments. This slide shows the top 10 sales tax revenue sources. The miscellaneous specialty retail sector has the highest tax revenue, and the marketplace facilitators has the highest percentage increase. This slide shows the sales and use tax revenues collected, cash received on hand in the past 3 years. The 2021 totals are higher than the 2020 and 2019. The green bar is higher than the other colored bars. And this is sales tax area map. As I mentioned earlier, the URA sales tax area from area 9 to 12 have been removed from the map. The online sales are currently included in area 7, but we're going to move the online sales to area 14 starting January 2022. So when Finance Manager Engels review the January financial, you will see the online sales will be removed from area 7 to area 14. This is the sales use tax collected by areas. For the general fund expenditures, the year-to-date expenditures are 52.95 million, which are 5.76 million less than the budget and 5.3 million higher than the 2020 actuals. Of the 5.6 million budgetary variances, 2.8 million under debt service is due to the COP payment, leaving approximately budgetary variances in the amount of 3 million. And the major variances are due to the compensations. All the employees on contracts received a 3.5 salary increase in 2021, and the rest of staff received 2.5 million. So let's calculate the operating surplus. For the 2020, we have 50 million revenue, 47. So for 2020, we had an operating surplus of 3.2 million. And for 2021, we received 54 million, have expenditure of 52.95. We had a 1.5 million operating surplus. So the difference between 2020 and 2021 was approximately 1.7 million, which is a decrease. This slide shows the general fund transfer in and out. As I mentioned earlier, the 150,000 advance to EDDA will become a loan on our fund balance composition slide, and we'll leave that loan on our financial for 7 years because the council approved the loan agreement to allow the term for 7 years interest only with a balloon payment at the end of the 7th year. This general fund balance composition slide has 2 parts. The top part shows the total fund balance. This bottom part shows the balance available above reserve policy. I want to point out what restricted committed fund balance means. The total fund balance consists of restricted, committed, and unassigned fund balance. According to our finance policy, any fund balance restricted by funders, creditors, or state constitution, we put a restriction. For example, TABOR is restricted by state constitution. ARPA funding is restricted by federal funder. The long-term assets reserve fund is committed by council by formal action. Like for February, we're going to add the DDA loan that will be committed. The council committed part of the fund balance to loan the balance to DDA. And this is unassigned fund balance. The current preliminary fund balance before audit final adjustments is probably 14.6 million. Please note, this amount includes ARPA funding. Remember, we record 689,000 in general fund. So we need to subtract this ARPA funding from the unassigned fund balance because it's restricted, not unassigned. And the second part shows the balance above the reserve policy unassigned fund balance at later. This latest committed amount by council. And the reserve policy is the current dollar amount for running rainy day fund. And we still have probably 4.7 million above the reserve policy. And this is just a sales tax slide by area for your review. This concludes my presentation for today. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for that presentation, Director Lowe. Any questions from council? Not seeing none. I also don't see Member Wink on the screen. But does she
We're
have a
watching for her
Okay.
to see if she raises her hand, but currently we don't have any.
Perfect. So if there's no questions from council, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, Director Lowe, which would be
We'll have January financials.
January financial. Moving on to agenda item 6. Go ahead, Director Lowe.
Actually, I'm going to handle this one. Evening, Mayor, Council. So for the January 2022 report, we'll start with the,
And apologies, we may need 1 second for IT to switch the monitor. Oop. Oop, nope. Sorry.
there we go.
Alrighty, thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with the general fund operating revenues. Through January of 2022, we have collected 9.8% of the total year's budget, and that compares to 9.4% last year. So here are the details by category. We've excluded a few items that you'll see down below. $188,000 for the sale of the Fire Training Academy. $138,000 for additional health insurance savings. And we're also estimating that we're going to be accruing back about $500,000 back into 2021 for sales tax collections. If you'll notice, some of the variances on the side look a little out of whack. That's just, it's because it's 1 month comparison. Here's your sales and use tax by revenue source. And then monthly. You'll see January looks like a spike, but that includes the $500,000 that we have not accrued back yet. So it would drop it right back into line with the other years, slightly ahead of the other years. Here's our accumulated sales and use tax increase over the last 5 years. Here's the by area again, the comparison, also open and closed businesses. You'll notice on area 14 there, we have moved the marketplace facilitators. So that comparison looks a little high just because of that. This is just a graphical representation of the previous slide. And a 3-year average for each area. So now we'll move on to the general fund operating expenditures. Through January, we are at 8.4% of the 2022 budget, and that compares to 7.9% of the last year's budget. We've had one small transfer in. That's a yearly transfer to cover debt service. Here's the breakdown by department. A couple of items I want to point out here. That top line legislation, there's a timing issue there. An invoice was paid in January of this year. It wasn't paid until February of last year, and that was about $36,000. Same holds true for information technology, but that invoice was about $300,000 for licensing, paid in January of this year, not until February of next year, or last year, excuse me. There's the transfer we spoke about. And here's your general fund balance composition. You'll notice over to the right, you've got your 2022 year-to-date surplus of $1.7 million. These numbers include the one-time items because they actually are in fund balance. We removed them from the other slides, but they do stay in here. So we got a total fund balance of $18.18 million. Still see the ARPA restricted there. As that gets spent, that restriction will drop as that happens during the year. And then your bottom number there, the balance above reserve is $6.5 million, which is about, I know you can't quite see it, it's 11.8%. So the rest are just the per area sales tax slides. So I'd be glad to take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Finance Manager Engels. Member Russell, get us started.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Engels, for the report. And I probably should have asked this of Director Lowe. Why are we moving Area 7 back into Area 14? They were together before, then we split them out. Why did we split them out, and why are we moving them back together?
I don't believe we're moving them back. I think she was talking about the marketplace facilitators.
Okay, so,
We're moving that out of 7 and into 14. It's not the whole Area 7.
okay, so it's
Just the online sale, the internet type sales, yes.
okay, and so why are we losing so many businesses in a single month?
I'd have to research that. I'm not sure what, it fluctuates quite a bit depending on how we get the reports in. And it could be that some of this was carryover from last year and just got reported in January.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other questions from council? Member Newnenkamp.
Thank you for the presentation. You noted the revenue from the sale of the fire training facility, and is that just in the unassigned fund balance right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I believe when we approved the sale of the building, we asked for a recommendation from finance on a policy of what to do when there's unanticipated revenue. Did we ever get that?
I'm not sure about that.
No, and I do remember we've had quite a bit of discussions during some one-on-ones with council members about whether or not to put that in a special fund related to risk. And so we probably need to follow up on that meeting and make sure that request was handled. So we'll look at that.
Thank you. I know that there was some conversation that evening as well about if we should do that. I think there was even a motion on the table to do something like that, and we were kind of wanting some more financial advice from the finance department. So I would still like that since we're noting it on the slide. Thank you.
If I may, Mayor Pro Tem Ward asked a similar question. So it's under CRT number 0382. We listed a disposal of fixed assets to show how the city has been recording the sales of fixed assets in our audited financial statements. So we have been recording the sale of fixed assets by funds, depending upon the general fund or enterprise fund. And currently we are recording the sales in 3 line items. Other revenue, or gains or losses, or miscellaneous revenue. So in this case, we recorded the sales of fire station in miscellaneous revenue. We feel it's been consistent with our practice. So the council still want to have a recommendation from the finance department, or do you feel this council request answer is sufficient?
I think for me, miscellaneous, while I think appropriate for some things, but when we're talking about a significant amount of money, especially for the sale of an asset, I think having some more policy around what we do with that money long term, I would find helpful. So that's my feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else want to weigh in or any other questions from council? Mr. Engels, not really a question, but just a comment. It looks like a couple of the slides are still, the numbers are correct, but some of the graphs may be showing incorrect information, such as slide 6 and slide 12. I don't see 2022 as within that actual line, but just a comment about that. I'm sure that'll get fixed in upcoming monthly reports. But any other questions from council? Seeing none, Mr. Engels, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. And Director Lowe, great to have you back. No need for you to show up tonight, but I'm happy to see you here tonight. But thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 7, presentation on state festival permits. City Attorney Tamara Niles will be present to discuss a revision to Colorado law regarding festival permits. Good evening, City Attorney Niles.
Thank you, Mayor. There we are. You may have read about this from other cities as well, but there is a new state festival permit, and so cities across the state are considering whether they wish to issue a local permit regarding this. Cities have the option. If we take no action, the state alone will issue a permit. If we decide to issue a local permit, then we will have the opportunity to weigh in, to receive notice of a local festival, and be able to ensure compliance with applicable code. So this law was signed on May 8th, 2021, that creates a statewide festival permit. I'm having a bit of an echo, so I'm going to try to back up a little bit. So a festival permit allows multiple licensees, and when I say licensees, I mean those holding a liquor license within the state, to hold liquor festivals where they may conduct joint tastings and engage in retail operations. So this is just one more example of a general shift in the way the state is regulating liquor licenses. Originally, there was one liquor license for one established location. But what we're seeing is a state trend to allow liquor licensees to sell at other locations throughout the state. And so I've listed the types of licensees that could participate in these festivals. You can hold 9 festivals in 12 months throughout the state of Colorado. Each festival must last no more than 72 hours. And participants can sell and serve their alcohol at the festival location, just like they could at, say, their restaurant or their bar or their distillery or their brewery. So I wanted to provide some examples of how this works or would work in practice. So let's say Inglewood restaurants all wish to come together and have a signature cocktail competition or something like that. They could do that under a festival permit, and they could take it around the state and do it 9 times throughout the state. Liquor distillers located elsewhere could hold a festival in Inglewood with tastings from several different licensed distillers. And all licensees can participate in the same festival. So then, as I started, we have the local permit option. From my city attorney listservs, it does look like most, if not all, cities are considering whether or not to issue it. And it does appear that most cities do plan to issue the permit, but they are all still in the same process we are, just studying it and considering whether they want to move forward. The downside, if we don't take any action at all, is that this goes directly to the state. So there may be a liquor festival in our community that we don't know about. At a minimum, for our police knowledge, I do want to make sure we know what's going on in our city. So benefits. The city and the police department are notified of the event. We as city staff can ensure appropriate zoning, other local regulations are met that may apply to the festival, and we can also place reasonable restrictions on the festival, such as requiring fencing, limiting it to a certain area, etc. So the next steps, if city council would like to move forward and consider such a local permit, it's a fairly simple amendment to our municipal code. We already have a section of code that does allow for individual licenses such as the festival permit. So it would be a simple matter of just adding the festival permit into our municipal code. Because we already have similar permits, we already have the regulatory structure in place and the fee schedule in place. We already have an application that would work, and we already have the cost of the permit in our fee schedule. Because it would be the same as the others, which is $150. So with that, I know CML had issued an article some time ago about what this permit was and to expect it, along with a description of other liquor licenses. So I anticipate that you all already have a background knowledge of what this issue is. But I would welcome any questions because I'm sure the public does not have that background knowledge.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. It's Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Get us started.
This looks like something that would fit in fairly well with some of our other city events. The block party is the one that comes to mind. Can you explain a little bit about how this might fit on top of something like that or along with it?
Well, I could just give you some examples of how it could work. Let's say block party, they want to close off an area and invite 7 different breweries to come in and do tastings or sell their different beers. They could have them come in, and in fact, they could hold that same festival 8 other times throughout the state or throughout the metro. So yes, it could certainly bring more retailers and business, possibly other people to our community to spend their funds in our community.
Is there a provision by which we could waive the municipal festival permit fee for businesses that are already licensed to sell alcohol within the city of Inglewood and charge a fee to outside entities that come in?
My immediate reaction was yes. However, we do need to be careful about not having laws that would not provide the equal protection of our laws to those from outside of our city. We can set the fee to whatever we would like, but I would recommend that we apply it equally to anyone that wants to bring a license in, out of an abundance of caution to ensure somebody doesn't allege that we're discriminating from someone outside of the city.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Attorney Niles. This is sort of a follow-up to Mayor Pro Tem Ward's question. Would this allow, because if I remember right, at the block party, the bars along Broadway were not actually allowed to go out onto the street and sell liquor because of the boundaries of their liquor license. Would this allow them to do that?
Yes, they would have to comply with the other requirements of the statute.
Okay.
But they could apply for the festival permit, they could all participate. So it would meet, I know, some of the objectives of some of those retailers. In the past, we had to have it's my understanding, we had a single sponsor, but now they can all go together and sponsor it together and participate.
So there could be, they would have to organize like a sub-festival or something underneath Inglewood Block Party. We couldn't just say, this is an official, festival that includes tastings from any business that pays the fee along the block or something like that?
They wouldn't have to formally organize, but somebody would have to apply for the festival
Okay.
permit.
Do you know the fees for that at the state level?
I
Is that-
understand the state right now charges
Probably in
a
here.
$25 application fee. And let me pull it up. We've already worked
Okay.
on an application. The state charges a $25 application fee, and then the city's application fee is $150, and that's what we charge for the other similar permits. So, yes, it would just be someone there essentially taking the lead, taking responsibility for it, filling out the application.
Could the city do that? I mean, I'm just curious, since we organize the whole block party, is there anything preventing the city from just saying, as a part of the block party, we're going to apply for this state license on behalf of any business that wants to participate. And of course, they would still have to fill out their own individual application, but
It appears to me that a licensee is the one
Okay.
that has to apply, but I will let you know if that's not correct.
okay. Very good, helpful, thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Noonekamp.
Thank you for the presentation. To Member Anderson's question about the block party specifically, that would work with just the state permit. That wouldn't require a municipal permit, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So essentially, if the city takes no action, this is still the law.
Right.
The city just doesn't weigh in, doesn't regulate, provides no oversight, probably receives no information on it.
And in your example of, someone holding their own block party or their own festival, I can't imagine a situation where we would let someone block off the street without any kind of permit, not this additional one. Can you help me think of an example where someone wouldn't already have a permit for some sort of festival, just having to do with the location or that kind of use, that this additional one would be needed to help us be notified of it? Do you understand what I'm asking? Because my understanding for this is that it's specific to the serving of liquor, correct?
So it allows the serving and consumption of liquor by multiple licensees in a single location. And they can do it more than once. It's not a single, they can do it 9 times.
Right, and so if someone was going to have this kind of festival without the municipal permit, with just their state license, they wanted to have it block off a street in our city, they would still have to have some kind of permit from the city if it wasn't this one. So I'm trying to understand where there would be a scenario where they would be able to have this event without any other additional permits. Does that make more sense?
Yes, private property.
Okay.
If it's on public property, we have to authorize it. But if they do it on private property, maybe it's in a front private parking lot along Broadway or something like that. I'm just throwing out possibilities. If it's on private property, the city would not otherwise weigh in.
Helpful, thank you.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Member Russell.
Thank you. So along those lines, let's say the liquor barn or something on Broadway had other vendors from different places in the state, and they wanted to bring them together and do something down at the liquor barn. We still, even though it's on private property, in their property, if they were doing it on the street or the sidewalk, there are municipal code that they would have to get a permit for that part of it, even if we don't permit for the others. Is that correct?
Yes, no one can have an event on public property or public right-of-way without our approval.
Okay, thank you. And did you say that the state is charging a $25 permit fee, and we would be thinking about charging a $150 permit fee in addition?
Yes, and that's just the same amount that we charge for all of our other permits, similar permits.
Right. Okay. I mean, so basically, if they wanted to do it in Inglewood, if we did that, it would cost them $175 for the permit, because it would be $150 to us and $25 to the state, right?
Yes, that's my understanding. The city clerk, their office was going to present on those issues, but because our agenda was so light, we moved it to tonight, but the city clerk was already scheduled to not be here. So those would have been directly within their answering knowledge, but that is my understanding, yes.
Okay.
And after I consult with them, if that's not correct, I will let you know.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is just a follow-up on Member Russell's question. Is if there was an event, each licensee pays 25, like, so if they got 10, breweries and distilleries together, each licensee pays $25. Am I understanding that correctly? Or is it just 25 for the whole event?
It's 25 for the whole event to the state, 150 for the whole event to the city. Because
Okay.
the permit fee reimburses us for our time in
Right.
looking at the location, making sure safety concerns are met. It doesn't pose a safety hazard to anyone. And so we only have to do that one time for the festival. So it's not per participant, it's the application.
So I guess on the state side, I'm just wondering, is this a special liquor license to allow them to do that? Or are they just extending their liquor license into another area essentially?
It's essentially changing their premises where they can sell. So
Okay.
they have to have their regular liquor license, and there's the list of potential liquor licenses. I'll flip back to that screen so you can see it. So they have to have a liquor license already. And if they have a state liquor license already, then they can participate in our festival at a different location.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Member Anderson, for that clarification, since I was confused as well. So, any other questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
One more question, I suppose. Under what circumstances would the city be allowed to deny a request? Does this bind us to issue a permit when one is requested?
No, they would have to be eligible for the permit under state law. But as long as they're eligible for a state permit, we would not put up additional roadblocks to that because it's governed by state law. However, we do have several, we could provide control plan guidelines, which the city clerk's office has already been working on, to require them, for example, to give us the boundaries of the premises, showing barricades, temporary fencing, signage that says no alcohol beyond this point, provide the hours of operation so we can ensure it won't unduly affect residential areas nearby. We can also regulate, for example, amplification if they're having music or something like that to make sure it doesn't affect other areas. We can also require insurance, which we require for other festivals and other similar permits. In addition, we would propose that they must certify that they won't serve to anyone under the age of 21. We can also request or require that they certify there will be some sort of food available on the premises to avoid some potential issues there. So we have the ability to add some regulations in, but really the goal for me in this is to give us information so that we can require insurance to make sure people are protected. We can protect our other citizens from loud noises. Without this permit, we don't have a say at all. It's happening, and we don't have the ability to put any restrictions on it.
Okay, so I think back to some festivals that have occurred in other municipalities, not necessarily involving alcohol. But, you know, you look at the next day and it's just a disaster area. Looking forward, I wonder if we have one of these somewhere in the city and it goes very, very poorly. The organizer is clearly a bad actor. They come back to us the next year, they say, hey, we want to do that again. It went so well for us last time. What then is our response? Do we say, no, we don't like you, you can't come here, or you have to face these 50 additional restrictions, or how do we handle that?
Well, first of all, I would want to recover the costs of cleanup. If they do the right thing, if they clean up or pay for the costs of cleanup and correct any issues, I think that's one thing. But it otherwise would depend on the nature of the violation. If they had liquor violations, for example, that would most likely give us a reason to deny the permit because you can't have liquor law violations when you're a licensee. So it really would depend, though. But before the cleanup, I would, for as far as trash and litter, absolutely we would require them to pay for that, and before they apply for another license, it would be immediately after the festival.
Sounds good, thank you.
Any other questions from council? If not, I guess the open question now is if we want the city attorney's office to move forward with the local permit option. Anybody want to get started with that, or just nodding of heads? I'll get started, but I would like to see a local permit option drafted by the city attorney's office, just for many of the reasons that were stated tonight in terms of just having a little bit more visibility across cities, police department, city staff, and just potential issues that Mayor Pro Tem just brought up as well. So that would be my preference. Anybody else? I see nodding of heads, but Member Woodward.
Yeah, I would like to see a local permit also for the reasons that, I mean, we need to be informed. I think it's to our benefit. I'd hate to think that just festivals would show up on someplace in the city and we didn't know about it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Anyone else? Any objections to the local permit option? I don't see any. I think that we would like to see a draft of that, City Attorney Niles, and thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Moving on to agenda item 8, reports from boards and commissions. Anybody have anything tonight? Actually, I may be the only one. We did have a DDA meeting last Wednesday. I guess really the only thing of note, well, the budget was discussed again. There were a couple of other items around just the loan agreement and the things that were passed over the last few weeks from council. That came up, but I guess a note mostly for members of the public. MRA and TRIBA gave a presentation. I'm not sure if TRIBA actually gave a presentation because MRA was present. I excused myself from the room just because we did have a public hearing, but I know that they presented something to members of the DDA as well as a member of our citizenry. So just a note for anybody that is interested to hear more about MRA and what they have planned for that area. So if no other reports, moving on to council members' choice.
I actually have,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
the speakers. Go ahead, Member Russell.
Thank you. I actually have Code Enforcement Advisory Committee met Thursday, February 17th. They've actually changed a couple of their dates to the third Thursday instead of the third Wednesday because one of the members is on Elevate Inglewood, and so they made that accommodation. The Code Enforcement Advisory Committee is looking at the suggestion that Councilmember Woodward pointed out, and so they may have already contacted the city attorney's office. Well, I mean, since the city attorney's executive assistant is our liaison, she probably already has dealt with it, correct? They're looking at the dangerous dog code, they're talking about that, and then there were a couple of things that they're still going back to inform us on more about the emerald ash borer, because they just want us to have all the information that we need for that. The Budget Advisory Committee, this was last Tuesday, February 22nd. They had Assistant City Manager Dodd speaking about sustainability, and the sustainability coordinator was there. A lot of the information that the Budget Advisory Committee gets, I think would be advantageous for this council to have those presentations because they are incredibly more informative than the information that we get. And because we're the ones that have the fiscal responsibility, I think that some of these things we should be listening to. So, and they have each meeting, they have different departments coming. So, coming up next, just a second. I'm not exactly sure. On March 22nd, this is upcoming Inglewood Community Outcomes presentation schedule. So this is the presentations that they'll have. Actually, I would encourage city council to go back and look at the presentation on the sustainability part of it. And so the upcoming ones are local economy and neighborhoods. In March and April, they'll have safety, the police department and the municipal court. And in May, they're having the transportation and public works department. So those are doing very well. So I have that. I have a couple other questions, but I can do that during council members' choice.
Sounds great. Member Russell, thank you very much for that. Actually, a couple questions. And I guess one of them would be for City Manager Lewis, but CEAC is going to be moving to Thursdays for the next couple meetings, or do they know?
I think it's only for a couple of meetings, and it's only because they would Elevate Inglewood would interfere with that. It would be difficult for the member.
And City Manager Lewis, do you know how long Elevate Inglewood, do they run through April?
Yes, we'll wrap up in April.
Okay. So it may only be a couple meetings. Thank you very much for the update, Member Russell. Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Just a couple of things. I too was at the Budget Advisory Committee meeting. I continue to be impressed by how sharp that current group is. I also had, within the past couple of weeks, I attended a Dr. Cog meeting. That is a really dense meeting. There's a lot of people in it, and it's gonna take me a while to get my feet from underneath me, so I can figure out what they're doing before we can actually start to represent Inglewood well at those meetings. One of the things that did come up at the Dr. Cog meeting is that Dr. Cog as a body takes a stance on some legislative items. During that session, I chose to abstain from those votes because I don't feel comfortable representing Inglewood's policy stance as a body, with my vote at Dr. Cog. I don't know if council wants to discuss that further, or if we just want to keep an abstain position for our Dr. Cog reps, or allow them to apply their own judgment on these votes. A lot of transportation related stuff in those Dr. Cogs, but some of it was also a little politically controversial. Moving people from cars into public transit, for instance, seemed to be a little less popular with the southern suburb representatives than it was with some of the more central areas. And then lastly, we had our school city liaison meeting last week. Member Neunenkamp, me and the city manager were there with the superintendent of schools and two of the school board members. It was just a kind of a cordial meeting. We talked a little bit about the IGA that the city has with schools for sharing and maintenance of various assets in the school and the city, some open space, and then our goal is to continue to meet quarterly going forward, just to keep the communication channels open. And that's all I have relative to boards and commissions.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else want to chime in? Member Russell.
Could I just ask, Councilmember Anderson, if you have any updates from the Sustainability Commission? Because there's missing audios and videos from November, December, January, and February.
Okay, I didn't know that. I think I did report on the February meeting a couple of weeks ago, but the summary of that was they introduced the new sustainability coordinator, and then we had a presentation from the planner, long range planner John Vorberl, on the walk and wheel plan and its relationship to sustainability, and then of course introduced the new members to the commission, which there are quite a number since we expanded that from the KEB numbers. But still, the commission is kind of reinventing itself with this new slate of members, and so we'll have a new chair starting. They did not select a new chair this meeting, but they will at the next meeting. So I think there's still kind of a learning curve going on with that commission. I missed the the previous one because that's the night that we were interviewing for boards and commissions. Then I missed one in December because I was out of town, so I don't have any report on those two meetings. But I did look at the agendas, and they were having presentations from different aspects of sustainability within the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell. And actually, I would echo your sentiments about the BAC meeting and just the detailed information that staff provides in terms of what they're looking for in terms of the budget. Any member of council that has not been a part of those, obviously we have a couple, I was a liaison last year, and there's 2 former BAC members as part of this council now, but it is a lot of informative information. So I would concur with Member Russell on that. Moving on to the next item, council members' choice. I guess I'll get started and then I'll open up to council, but 2 items tomorrow. I believe there's gonna be a couple council members, right? For the groundbreaking of the Acoma Phase 2 project. It starts at 4 o'clock at Lincoln and Acoma. Wait, no. Union. I was gonna say why Lincoln. Yeah, so that'll start at 4 o'clock. It'll be about an hour, and there'll be a couple council members there saying a few words before the groundbreaking. So I'm hoping that members of the public can join us as well. And then lastly, I know that Member Noonan asked me if council needed to be present, but I will be presenting at the South Metro Denver Chamber this coming Friday at 7:30 a.m. It's between 7:30 and 9 o'clock. Mayors from around the Denver metro area will be there. I believe there's about 6 of us: Lone Tree, Sheridan, Littleton, Greenwood Village, Cherry Hills Village. I may be missing a couple, but we'll be presenting in terms of just what our cities are doing for small businesses in our town. And so I'll be giving a short 10-minute speech about what we're doing. So just wanted to give people an update. This Friday, 7:30 at the Lone Tree Arts Center down in Lone Tree. That is all for me. Anybody else from council with the member's choice? Member Russell?
Thank you. So, City Manager Lewis, on the sustainability, I know that I had sent an email, and I think that perhaps October got put up, the video on October, but the rest of them are not put up yet. And I have a constituent that's contacting me, and there's a little bit of concern because it is a new commission and it needs to be a lot more transparent. Just having the agenda out there is really, when it's the video that is the minutes, that we need to make sure that those are there.
Thank you. And if I could respond, we agree 100%. And in the words of the staff member working on this, it's been a nightmare. We're not sure why that's been difficult, but Assistant City Manager Dodd is working with Mel England to make sure that those are up. We think we have them. And so we're just trying to get those converted to a format and uploaded. So it's on our top of our list.
And if it's okay, Sean, if I just interject, Member Russell, I greatly apologize, and it's a technology issue. The videos are there, meaning we have them. We just haven't been able to post them yet. And so it's something we're trying to resolve as soon as possible, and I greatly apologize for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to mention that I came to the community event for the Code Next kind of kickoff 2 weeks ago, Thursday, here in the community room. And staff just did a great job, and also the consultants presenting on that, a number of different topics. There was probably, 8 or 10 people in the room, and then maybe another 8 or 10 people on Zoom from the community. There were some technical glitches, but they did end up getting it recorded and it's available online. But it was a great event, pretty well attended, and a lot of good feedback from the community, especially on housing options and those kind of things. So look forward to seeing how that continues to unfold, and wanted to thank staff for all their work putting these events together.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Anyone else from council? If not, moving on to City Manager's choice.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry. Cheryl Wink had her hand up, and I just wanted to make sure she had an opportunity.
Member Wink? Sorry to skip you there.
I wasn't going to bother and say anything, but it was just a little comment to the Mayor Pro Tem in deciding not to vote at Dr. Cog. I've been the alternate for former Mayor Olson for, I think, a few years, and we are voting members and we receive the packets of information beforehand. And so I was just confused as to why suddenly a member wouldn't vote in that very important meeting. It just seemed a little odd. So if I don't need to prolong the meeting over it, but I never saw any representative from any city across the state that joined for the first time, just decide not to vote, or it just, I don't understand. So happy to talk if you'd like to, since I've been to those meetings as well.
Yeah, thank
Thanks.
you, Member Wink. Actually, and I do appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Warbring. I did go to the first Dr. Cog meeting. I didn't go to the second just because I didn't have it on my calendar, so Mayor Pro Tem actually did fill in. I think that is a conversation that we may want to have because I did feel uncomfortable with some of the legislative. One of them, during the meeting that was there back in January, I guess it was about the safety stop. And obviously, as a council, we made that as part of our traffic code back in November of 2020, so I decided to vote on that issue. But I can understand just some hesitancy from Mayor Pro Tem Ward as well as myself in terms of whether or not we want to state yay or nay on a specific legislative issue. So if anybody has any comments about how they would feel comfortable about us moving forward on this, I'll leave it open to you, Member Anderson, to start us off.
Thank you, Mayor, and Councilmember Wing for bringing that up. I don't know I hear there's some legislative things, some transportation related things, and there is an agenda that comes out ahead of time. I would be interested, at least before, say authorizing our representative to do that, to at least see some of what they're doing. And, I generally trust the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and that kind of thing. But if there is something controversial on there, something council might be divided on, I hesitate giving the full authorization, I guess, without knowing a little bit more. But I think we do need to have a voice in that. But I appreciate that the Mayor Pro Tem were concerned about doing that without getting some feedback from council. So I'd like to have maybe a little follow-up on that and see if we could see some of those issues before I would be comfortable giving the go-ahead.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Anyone else? Member Newnenkamp.
I concur with Member Anderson, but I would also add to the point about the safety stop. If it's something that's in our strategic plan that we've already agreed on, something that we already have a point of view on, I am 100% fine with you voting on those issues. If it's something that we're divided on or that we haven't discussed, maybe holding back on some of those until we have a point of view would be helpful.
Thank you, Member Newnenkamp. Member Woodward.
Yes, having been a past member of Dr. Cog, I certainly can empathize with you, but I think that, that fades with each meeting, and, by the third meeting, you're probably feeling a whole lot more comfortable. And I think as Member Newnenkamp mentioned, I think you've probably got a pretty good idea of the way this board would go. And I think you vote on that. And if you're wrong, it's probably not, in most cases, going to change something that they decide on. Mm-hmm. So I just want to give you support to go ahead and feel comfortable with making a decision.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Anderson.
I think the votes where I think that where we might have a divided council, or where I might disagree with some of these issues on Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know, is if it's one of these questions where there's an urban suburban split on the vote, like on public transportation things and those kind of things. I would probably land more with some of the urban people, where I think we had some people on the council who might land more with the suburban crowd on some of those things. So those are issues I take really seriously and are high priorities to me. So I would, I guess I would want to maybe talk about principles on those kind of things before the go ahead. But that's the only question.
Thank you, Member Anderson. And I guess just as a comment, I'm not sure, Mayor Pro Tem Ward, if you saw it, but there were plenty of members that did abstain from the vote during my session in January, so I'm not sure if you saw the same in February.
Member Wink has her hand up.
Member Wink.
Thanks. To just validate what someone who has been on that board, Member Woodward, said, it is true. For any concerns that you're having about your vote, there aren't 7 people voting. There are probably 77 people voting. So if Steve Ward says no to something, it's not going to throw the whole state upside down. It's something else to consider. It's a huge group of individuals. It's a lot different than what we, our voices are diluted quite a bit because of the volume of individuals. Not that if one person says nay in the whole group, we just look at them cross-eyed and walk off. But just keeping that in mind for those who haven't been to the meeting. But thanks,
Yeah,
thanks, Member Woodward.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Member Wink. Roll call does take 30 minutes, so it is quite a lot of attendees there. Anybody else on this feedback? It does sound like we want to have more discussion about some of the agenda items. I haven't received the next meeting for Dr. Cog. I'm sure it's coming up in a couple weeks, but I'll be sure once I get the agenda, I'll make sure to get it out to all members of council so you can look over the information at the very least. Any other comments? Seeing none, City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 items that are really follow-ups to your comments tonight. And that is the Director of Public Works, Maria DeAndre, and I have been discussing potentially providing council with kind of your own council communication with regard to city positions at Dr. Cog. You probably will notice if you've ever been there that some cities bring their own staff. They have this briefing in front of them from staff. It's really hit or miss in terms of what cities do and how they approach that with their council representatives. We're glad to provide some of that. In the last couple of years, the mayor has called Director DeAndre about the transportation items, just kind of picked her brain on those. What's the city's position in terms of, what council action has been taken in the past, et cetera. That kind of interaction between council and staff, I think in preparation for you representing us at Dr. Cog is perfectly appropriate. And I think we've done some of that with you as well, Mayor. And so we're glad to do that or provide a briefing, either one. So she and I have been talking about that there are some pretty sticky issues coming to Dr. Cog, so we're glad to help you with that. And really not just giving staff's opinion, but telling you what council has agreed upon in the past or projects that we already have in the till that are related. And then the last thing is just that if you would like to attend the South Metro Chamber event that the mayor referenced, we're glad Krista can get you tickets for that still. I think those are still available at the Lone Tree Arts Center. And it sounds like it's going to be a pretty interactive session with the attendees, the way you all have formulated it. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, City Manager Lewis. Seeing no other items, we are now adjourned. It is 7:10, and we'll see you all next Monday. Have a good evening, everyone.